Alright, so in this video I'm going to be telling you everything you need to know before visiting Kotor, and it's going to be made up of things that I wish I knew before visiting. So this video is going to include a variation of things like some really handy tips, some sneaky tricks, some criticisms, some mistakes that you won't make after watching this video, and just some general advice which you'll find helpful. Anyway, let's get into it. Okay, so starting off at the top of our 18-point list, number 1 is to not have such high expectations. Now I get it, this one is a little bit controversial and probably not what you want to hear if you've just booked it, but bear with me. So before I went, I'd heard from a few people that it is just incredible. So of course the bar was set up here. Now generally we did think that it didn't quite live up to the heights of expectation, however it did grow on us, but we will get back to that in some of our later points. Now I don't want this to put you off from going, but there were just a few things which tainted it a little for us. It did feel a little neglected and run down in parts. There was also plenty of construction going on in places too, but this could have been because it was before the tourist season, and also just generally because of some other points I'm going to touch on throughout this video. And just so you know, we are getting all the negative shit out the way first, so bear with me. Okay, so point number 2, it is more expensive than I expected. Now don't get me wrong, Montenegro and even still Kotor is still quite a bit cheaper than the rest of Europe, especially if you're used to places like Spain, Italy, Croatia, but for the Balkans it was still a bit more expensive than I'd anticipated. And according to a few sources online, Kotor has apparently gotten significantly more expensive in the past few years, which could be due to inflation, but it could also be due to our next point. Okay, so number 3, tourist tax. Now, of course, Kotor is still quite a popular place, especially in summer, so as you can imagine, some of the prices are going to be hiked up a bit. But just for the area, there were a few things which I thought were ridiculous, like paying €15 to walk up to the fortress. One of the parking sites was €20 a night for a camper van, and another example is €20 to get transfer there and back to the cables car station, which is 10 minutes away. So yeah, I have just nitpicked a few little things. Generally, apart from that, the prices were decent, so don't worry too much. But I just thought a few of the tourist things were a bit too high. Anyway, let's stop whinging now. Coming in at number 4 is very cheap pizza. So right in the heart of the old town, there were a couple of places which sell big massive slices of pizza for €3. So it makes for a really handy way to get cheap lunch when you're in the old town exploring. So yeah, who doesn't love pizza? Don't hate me. Alright, now moving on to number 5 is Skurda Canyon. This is a spot that I found completely by chance when we were actually trying to find our way up to the fortress. Again, that's something we're going to touch on in a minute, but before we get on to that, the canyon's just like a 5 or 10 minute walk away from the old town. It's a really lovely little spot. You've got this really impressive gorge, beautiful crystal clear water running through. So if you're a bit more adventurous, I do think you can really enjoy just wandering through. Of course, be careful for your own safety. It's not going to be without risk. And just one more thing to note, I think it dries up in the summer, which would mean that it's easier to get through, but probably also not as pretty. Anyway, coming in at number 6 is bank withdrawal fees. Now, a lot of the places to withdraw cash in the Balkans in general, but Montenegro is no exception, the withdrawal fees are disgusting. So it's quite common for them to charge like €5 or €6 per transaction and then also give you a poor exchange rate on top of that. So try to take enough cash with you if you can so you don't need to withdraw when you're there. If not, you may want to try a few ATMs and just check the price. And if it's ripping you off, just click cancel and take your card out. But just some little tips in case you do need to withdraw money, I like to have on my phone ready, like a converter, so you'll have euros to GBP or whatever your home currency is. So what you'll do, if you want to take €100 out, you'll click €100 on the converter and it'll tell you how much that costs in your home currency. So then when it tells you how much it's going to cost, you get a pretty good idea of how much it's going to set you back. And when you're withdrawing cash in a foreign country, always pay in the currency of the country you're in. So in Kotor, that would be euros. Also, when traveling abroad, it's really handy to have a card which doesn't charge you exchange fees when you're abroad. I use Stalin and Revolut. Another popular one I think is Monzo. I'll leave some links down below if you want to order some of these cards. Usually it's free and it'll save you money if you're spending a lot of money abroad with your normal card. Okay, now number 7 is kind of leading on from number 6. It is take cash. So a lot of the main supermarkets and main touristy stuff and restaurants and bars will probably accept card, but compared to the UK and probably a lot of other places in Europe, you can't pay by card quite as much as you would probably like. So yeah, just in general, make sure you've got cash because there will be some things I can guarantee you that you can only pay by cash. Alright, now number 8, summer crowds. Now of course, like anywhere, it's going to be a hell of a lot busier in the months of summer. But because Kotor Old Town is quite small, you can imagine when all those cruise ships come in and you've got everyone else visiting as well, it can get packed. So if you don't like crowds, it might be worth visiting in the shoulder seasons, so probably April, which is when we visited, or May or September is probably your best bet if you also want decent weather too. And leading on from that is probably my favourite thing yet, is to use a cruise timetable checker. Now this is something that I had never heard of before, but it's really handy. I'll leave a link to our website down in my description below. But basically you can click a date, click for the port of Kotor, and you can see what cruise ships are going to be there and on what day. So it's pretty normal in summer that you can have like 3 cruise ships landing in Kotor in one day. So you can imagine that is literally going to be thousands of people packing in, doing tours, and it's going to be jam-packed pretty much all day. So go out of season or check the cruise timetable before you book your dates, and you might get somewhere where it's a bit quieter. You might only have 1 small ship arriving instead of 3 huge ships. So you can use that to your advantage. All right, now number 10 is to avoid the southern part of the bay. Now, unfortunately, this is where we stayed. It was pretty industrial. It was pretty ugly. There was no real access to the front of the water. Now, there was some construction going on, so it could be a case where it ends up nicer within the next year or even by this summer, but I wouldn't bank on it. So instead, I would recommend you probably stay either around the old town or just north, where it's a lot more proper and a lot more nice, and you're much more likely to get a good balcony view of the whole Bay of Kotor. Okay, now the next one that I recommend you don't miss is to walk along the promenade. Now this was a bit stupid of us to not realise and not do research, but we didn't realise that the nicer part was north of the old town of Kotor, pretty much where I've just recommended you stay. But yeah, it's a lot more proper, a lot more clean, and it's lovely to walk along. You've also got loads of bars and restaurants, and you've also got pretty much the only beach in the area near Kotor. So yeah, a little bit of a silly mistake on our part, so don't make the same error. We would have enjoyed Kotor a lot more, I think, if we were staying in that area and discovered that walk sooner on our trip. Now, number 12 is bus station fees. Just something simple. If you're exiting Kotor by bus or coach from the bus station, it is pretty standard again in the Balkans to have to pay fees when you're leaving. So make sure you turn up like 15 or 20 minutes really before your bus departs. You usually have to pay for them to print your ticket off or just use the bus station in general. It won't cost much, usually only a couple of euros per person. All right, now next one, number 13 is Sunday closures. Now it's pretty normal for a lot of supermarkets and grocery stores to be shut on Sunday. Now bars and cafes and all the touristy stuff will probably be open, but just if you are going to do like a touristy all day thing on the Sunday or even on the Monday, you might not be able to get like food and supplies from the shop in the morning on the Sunday, or if you're going on the Monday the day before. Okay, now number 14, the view from the old town just felt a little bit restricted. So round about the old town, you can't really see across the whole bay. And even if you go on top of the fortress walls in the old town, it is still a little bit restricted just because of trees and buildings. Now this was something that we were a little bit disappointed on. I did just expect that you'd be able to see the whole bay, but it's not really a problem. Either just walk up to the old fortress on the hill above or walk along the promenade like I said, and you'll get great panoramic views of the whole bay. Now number 16, and this might just be my favourite, it is goats. Meh. Oh shit, no, I got carried away. We're actually up to 15. So number 15 is the freeway up to the Kotor Fortress. Now again, maybe a lack of preparedness on our behalf, but I just looked up at the fortress and usually I would just think, oh, I'll just go and walk up the hill for free and enjoy the views. But we got quite a quick shock. But we did get quite a quick shock when we tried to go up through the path from the old town. And this was my reaction when I found out the news.
Wow, 15 euros per person to walk up to the fortress, to walk up. That is disgusting.
But thankfully, you don't need to get as angry as me. There is a freeway up. It's called the Ladder of Kotor. It's a zigzag path. It's pretty much a similar kind of thing. It'll take you about an hour to get up to the fortress, but the only caveat is that you need to climb through this window here. Now, this is something to keep in mind. Obviously, not everyone is going to be able to climb through, but if you can, it's definitely worthwhile to save yourself 15 quid. And it's worth keeping in mind that if you go in through the window, you also need to come out through the window. If you try and go back down the other path into the old town, they will charge you 15 euros when you try and get back out. There is a turnstile there. But yeah, the views are insane and it's definitely something I'd recommend you do. Even if you don't want to climb up into the window, into the fortress, you can still get amazing views over the bay without doing that. Okay, now we can finally do 16. Goats. So up by that path at the top of the Ladder of Kotor, there was a... what am I doing that for? Yeah, it's a zigzag path. So there are the goats that pretty much hang around that area. Of course, naturally, they do move around, so you will probably have to explore a little bit to find them. But they were so cute, and it was probably my favourite thing in the whole of Kotor, so make sure you set aside some time to see them. Now, coming in at number 17 is something else we couldn't manage to do because we were a little bit early in the season. Now, I think it opens around Easter time or near the end of April, and probably closes in about September. So the cable car and the mountain coaster do look incredible. It takes you up really high into the mountains, and the mountain coaster is right next to the top cable car station, so they're both really easy to do together. I'll link the cable car website in my description below again, which will tell you pretty much everything you need to know. There's also a few other things around there at the top which you can see too. But there's a catch. Why is there always a bloody catch? So the cable car station is about 10 minutes away from the old town of Kotor. It's not really walkable, so your only option is to get a taxi really. Just a heads up, you should not be paying any more than 10 euros really to get there. So make sure you haggle if you need to. And obviously if you're with other people, that price will come down per person. I think there was also some discounts if you're paying by certain cards and that sort of thing, but again, you'll find that on the website. And finally, if you've made it to the end, high five. So number 18 is I just wish there was a really handy YouTube video with a handsome host who tells you everything, all the best things to see and do in Kotor. Wait a minute. There is one, and you can watch it here. So yeah, make sure you check out that video. There's less whinging, I promise. But yeah, I don't want to let these criticisms and points put you off from going to Kotor. It is still great, but I think you'll have a better time with us if you don't have expectations up here and also take plenty of the advice on board. So yeah, my other video is less whingy and you'll probably get to see a nicer side to Kotor on that one. See you there. Adios.